ladies and gentlemen. Rick. Can you hear me in the back? Okay, that's a good thing. Well, welcome. It's great to see you all. This is just a little bit different of a crowd than we had at the first town hall when we had standing room only. So clearly the word's getting out. People are getting the information they need. I'm going to call this town hall to order, and I want to thank you for joining us today as we continue to engage on the subject of our collective reserve fund. I would ask you all to please silence your phones. If we don't get intentional about that, somebody's will go off. This meeting is being recorded, and the briefing slides that will be presented today will be posted on the website. I'd like to introduce everybody sitting at the table here with me today. First to my left is Campbell Cheney. He's our chairman of our finance committee, past treasurer of the board. Sitting next to him is Dan Liniger, our vice president. Walter Yazzie, our general manager. Denise Lexell, director. Mark Eckert is our treasurer. Larry Santor is our assistant treasurer, and Chuck Kill is a director. The one person that's missing is Miss Shawn Kreiderman, who happens to be the lead in the Community Circle Players' upcoming theatrical presentation, and she is going to play the role of Agatha. She gets a get-out-of-jail-free card because her and Campbell are busy taking this presentation to every unit within Saddlebrook to ensure it's her passion that every resident has an opportunity to hear the true truth. Those are Shawn's words. And she's ensuring that every unit has that opportunity. So this gives me just a second to thank Karen Brooks and the leadership of our unit rep committee that's making all that possible. Our unit reps are the ones that have gone out to you, the residents. We've done 3 of these sessions so far. I have sat through 2 of them. We've had more than 450 residents show up in those 3 presentations. We had standing room only at the first town hall, and you can see we have more than 100 people gathered here in this gathering. Next slide. So I want to speak first about resident voice. I got asked a point-blank question last week before I left town, and the person says, "When are you going to start listening to the residents?" Well, that tickled the heck out of me, because we did the survey this past summer with the McMahon Group, and you gave me 668 pages of comments and suggestions. And some of our residents are very creative writers. And then after the December 13th presentation, we opened up a portal to get all the comments, feedback, feelings, emotion that the good old Replacement Reserve Advisory Group, after their presentation to the board and your response to that. We opened up another portal after our last town hall, and Ray Adams does a fantastic job of taking all that data and synthesizing it for me so I have a chance to read it. More than 500 comments, suggestions, questions, declarations, etc. have been provided to us. So, when are we going to start listening to the people? As you came in today, everybody was handed a sheet of paper. I received this just as I was leaving for Disneyland last week. And grandkids mail. The grandkids won. And so I came back, and that's in my inbox, and I haven't had time to deal with it, but you get to read it today for yourselves. And so what I want you to know is we have been listening. We have been engaging. We've been trying to understand your concerns. And when I say we, I talk about everybody sitting on this board. Now, For those folks that were with us yesterday at our board working session, it was spirited. We don't always agree, and sometimes we don't agree on much. But at the end of the day, the buck stops here, and we have to continue to lead on. Next slide. So I want to start my presentation today by acknowledging the contributions of all those board members that came before us, because we stand on their shoulders. And I'm going to give you the evidence of that later in my presentation. On a daily basis, I, as your president, am reminded daily of our collective failures. I want to take this moment to celebrate the many victories that have occurred that enabled the board in 2023 to produce this mission statement. Saddlebrook HOA2 offers an outstanding active adult lifestyle to our homeowners and guests by combining our majestic natural desert and mountain landscapes with a broad variety of amenities and activities, well-maintained facilities, and quality services. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why this corporation exists. Next slide. This is our vision statement: to be the premier active adult community of choice in southern Arizona. At the very first Unit Rep Committee Town Hall for Units 45 and 49, a resident stood up and stated, "We've already achieved our vision." I wanted to scream, "Amen." But not so fast, because that wouldn't be truthful. We have work to do. Truth is, we have serious work to do to achieve this status. And that's what this discussion today is all about. You all are a very intimidating group. I get dry mouth. So the discussion that we're going to have today, it's important and it's pointed, and it's directly related to how we can, in fact, achieve this vision. Next slide, sir. So we have an attorney who comes in and coaches us and advises us on our responsibilities. The responsibilities that your board shoulders. We have to enforce our rules, and we've got to maintain our common areas. Sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? Common areas in this case consist of $28 million worth of assets that are listed on our balance sheet. It's our clubhouses, our pools, our theater that you're sitting in, our roads, the pickleball complex, the tennis courts, the golf courses, all the common areas, etc. Next slide. So, if you were here at the first meeting, you know that I rely on other sources than my own experience and brain in trying to figure out ways to enhance our community and the services we deliver. This author, who happens to be the owner of the largest company that manages HOAs like ours, he writes that our job is to protect your assets, maintain and enhance the asset values. Our fiduciary obligations are the duty of loyalty, candor. We have to act with integrity, and we have a duty of full disclosure. You're going to see all that in evidence today. And we have a responsibility to effectively delegate authorities to Walter Yazzie and his staff so they can deliver all the services that you enjoy as a resident here in Saddlebrook HOA2. The one thing that this board cannot delegate is its responsibilities to act on behalf of our corporation. Next slide. So what is our number one responsibility? It's to maintain, protect, and enhance the value of the assets of our members. Every decision this board makes has to answer this question. Are we maintaining, protecting, or enhancing our asset base? If the decision we're making doesn't do that, we shouldn't be making it. Next slide. So I have been misquoted regularly and routinely. I know you find that hard to believe. We have a challenge. Our problem statement is simply this. We have a known set of requirements over the next decade that amount to $45 to $50 million. We didn't make that up. The board didn't make that up. That's our reserve study. Campbell's going to tell you a lot about that. We do not have a crisis. We do not have an emergency. What we do have is a conundrum. That's a difficult problem that must be solved. We collectively, you and I, have an opportunity to chart a new course for our community and reverse what we've experienced over the last 6 years. The board has agreed to a set of tenets related to this discussion today in option 3. Throughout my presentation, I'm going to share some of those tenets, and at the end of it, I will tell you what all of those tenets are. Campbell's going to speak to the shortfall in the reserve fund, the $14 to $15 million shortfall that we have. And he's going to tell you it amounts to about $4,600 a residence. Next slide. So I've had to challenge myself to focus my thinking to convey to you what I think is really important that you take away from your president today. And so I built myself this model. I'm going to lay out for you effectively, I hope, the 3 courses of action that have been provided to us. And I'm going to explain to you very succinctly the difference in those courses of action. I'm going to talk to you about the objectives that fall out of option 3. And I'm going to talk to you about the funding sources related to the reserve fund, the community improvement fee, the capital improvement fund, your dues, and yes, the dreaded word, assessments. Next slide. Some people have taken exception to us talking about our conundrum in terms of the fork in the road. But that's truly where we are. We're going to chart 2 very distinctly different courses of action for the community. We collectively are going to do that. What you're going to be provided with is all the information you need to make the decision you think is in your best interest. We were provided 3 courses of action by the RRA group. They worked on this for 6 months before they brought it to us, and I had the pleasure of watching that work along with Campbell. He was the treasurer, I was the assistant treasurer, and we sat in all those meetings. And the challenge they had was to find the optimum solution for the situation we find ourselves in today. And then they had to produce a solution, we would call it suboptimal, but would allow us to accomplish the task of meeting all the reserve requirements over the next decade. That's what these 3 courses of action were designed to do. Next slide. So option 3 is the optimum course of action. It was the optimum course of action because of the benefits it delivers for us, the residents of Saddlebrook 2. It allows us to catch up the reserve fund shortfall. It pays off the Mountain View loan in 2024. It pulls the preserve rejuvenation forward to 2027. Campbell's going to tell you why that's important. And it produces the lowest property owner assessment, otherwise known as your annual dues, possible across the next decade. Next slide. So, Campbell's going to tell you that 46% of the requirements associated with our reserve fund over the next decade are related to golf courses and golf maintenance. That is true. That's a fact. I can't run and hide from it, and nor do I choose to. It is what it is. And so a lot of folks have been upset about the Mountain View rejuvenation. If my good friend Rhett Benedict were here, he's on the golf course, but if he were here, he would be smiling like Joyce is. This plan was put into motion in 2019 when the 2019 board produced the 2020 budget. And in that budget, they had a plan to take a loan out for the irrigation system associated with the Mountain View rejuvenation. As we move forward in time, in 2021, there was a lot of conversation and partnering that went on between the golf committee and the board in refining our approach to the Mountain View rejuvenation. In March of that year, we had the first public golf meeting, and it was done via Zoom because we were in the middle of COVID. And in May, the first budget presentation was made that looked at the scope of the Mountain View rejuvenation. I tell you all that because people seem to be surprised about how this all happened. And so I want to eliminate any surprise or lack of knowledge about the process that went on and make sure we all understand we're operating with a common operating picture. In 2021, the board approved the Mountain View rejuvenation plan. I'm sorry, I wear hearing aids and it's ringing in my head. I can't shut it off. So in 2021, we approved the plan and we hired the architect and the irrigation consultant. In 2022, the 2022 board took the plan and revised it further and turned the 2 9-hole strategies into an 18-hole build. And they hired a construction company and they approved the final project scope. The 2023 board got to oversee the execution of that plan, and this board will see the culmination of our effort this spring when we complete the punch list and the final plantings and we close out the budget process. I tell you all of this because all of this work was done in public forum, in public meetings, in board meetings, finance committee meetings, golf committee meetings. This was transparent to the community throughout this entire process from 2019 to today. Next slide. So then the conversation turns to needs versus wants. And so Mike Ogle was our architect and he produced a master plan which we briefed out to the community early in 2021. We took that master plan and we built this storyboard. On the left side, you'll see the must-haves. That would be the needs, I guess. The needs, the things that had to be rebuilt, replaced, repaired because they were past their life cycle. There was some deferred planning. That's all those aspirational projects we didn't get to. And then there was a should do. And based on the advice of our agronomist, we thought turf reduction probably made sense with the water issues this state is currently experiencing and the rules that are coming at us very rapidly. There were 2 other aspirational projects, the cart path from number 9 to number 10, and the rebuild of the 15 green complex, and the only people who care about that are golfers. The green was some months of the year unplayable, and both of those projects were completed with not your money. They were completed with golf improvement funds. That fund no longer exists, but $188,000 worth of golf improvement funds had been collected over the previous couple of years. And most of those funds went to support the Mountain View rejuvenation. And so I was in a meeting last week, and somebody thought the board was not showing its ability to be frugal, and their example was the cart path. Ladies and gentlemen, the cart path was paid for by golfers. Next slide. So what are the benefits we as a community derived from that effort? The board did a lot of good work with the architect. We utilized HDPE in our irrigation system, which is going to more than double the life of an irrigation system that was previously with PVC would last 20 to 25 years, will now last in excess of 50 years. We will never put an irrigation system into Mountain View again in our lifetimes. We reduced our bunkers infrastructure from 70,000 square feet to 50. In that process, we moved some of the bunkers away from the greens a little bit to facilitate our automated maintenance, to facilitate mowing, chemical applications, and so we wouldn't have to get off of our equipment and do things by hand. Makes things more efficient. We're going to buy 20,000 square feet less sand every 7 years. I mentioned the maintenance efficiencies we gained, and of course everybody here knows about the turf reduction. And because no good deed goes unpunished, the turf reduction took a bunch of green grass, and right now we have brown hills. And we're going to recover to a desert, whatever you're going to call a landscape, but it doesn't happen overnight. And so for the residents that are looking at our brown hills that haven't turned into desert yet, I'm asking for your patience, because it will change and it will evolve back into the desert. Next slide. I'm not going to spend any time on this. $188,000 worth of golf improvement fund. A lot of things that could have come out of the CIF, the Capital Improvement Fund, did not. They came out of the Golf Improvement Fund. Next slide. So let me spend a moment on the preserve. It seems to be the elephant in the room. It's an expensive proposition, more expensive than Mountain View, because we've got to redo the greens. We've got to resurface the greens. And we've got to do the pump station. Those two things were already done at Mountain View. And so in this plan, this option 3 plan that we, the board, are championing, it pulls that project forward 2 years. And Campbell's going to tell you why that's important, but I'll give it away now. It saves us money. The preserve plan itself, we got to replace the irrigation system. The T-decks, the greens have to be resurfaced, the bunkers have to be rebuilt, the pump station has to be replaced. And we'll get around to arm wrestling over the turf reduction initiative at the preserve and whether or not it's required. Thank God that's a decision this board doesn't have to make. And of course, we've got the design work. So here's what the preserve storyboard looks like. The left side of that board over there, the must-haves, that's all the things that I just told you about that have to be done because they've exhausted their life cycle. We're now on borrowed time. Somebody said to me yesterday, but the preserve's in the best condition I've seen it since I've lived here. Me too. Me too. I've lived here for 10 years. And Paul Halleck and his team have done a great job with the preserve. We're on borrowed time though. All the stuff to the right of the must-haves, that's all aspirational stuff related to if you're a golfer, you want to see it done. Future boards will decide. So let me talk about the next option. Next slide, please. Option 2. It's the most expensive option to our residents. The reserve fund catch-up is completed. but it does not pay off the Mountain View loan in 2024. It leaves the preserve rejuvenation in 2029, and it produces the highest annual POA, annual dues, of all the options. So, when you contrast that to what Campbell's going to tell you, the savings associated with paying off the Mountain View loan, the savings associated with pulling forward the preserve rejuvenation, and the impact it has on our pocketbook. Next slide. So then there's option one. And I call option one the middle of the road option for our residents. It also completes the reserve fund catch-up, which was the essential task we gave the RRA group back in May. It does not pay off the Mountain View loan in 2024, and the preserve rejuvenation remains in 2029. However, this option requires a loan to fund the preserve irrigation system. Next slide. So the optimum option completes the reserve fund catch-up just like options 1 and 2. And with $300 assessments annually and large dues increases, we could fund the catch-up in the other two options. What we couldn't have done is pay off the Mountain View loan, move up the preserve course, golf course rejuvenation, or produce the lowest possible dues like the optimum option does. So I promise you a brief chat about funding sources. The tools in our toolkit are straightforward. We of the board have heard your comments, and we are considering tweaking option 3, because that's the only word I can use. We're not materially changing option 3, but we're having a debate about how to utilize the community improvement fee, the capital improvement fund, and or make exceptions in how we protect our reserve fund to produce different strategies that may lower the ask. Next slide. So I tried to make this slide easier for you all in the audience. The big blue box on the left is your annual dues. This year, 70% of your dues went into our operating fund. The operating fund is used for our general day-to-day operations of the association. It funds general admin, facilities maintenance, common area maintenance, the patrol, and it funds our subsidies. 30% went into our reserve fund. That's what we're here to talk about today. The reserve fund provides for replacement and major repair of existing HOA assets, and Campbell's going to tell you what those characteristics are to be considered an asset that goes into our reserve fund. On the right side of the chart is the community improvement fee. Anyone here who bought their home from somebody that previously owned it paid the community improvement fee. It's equal to 1 year's dues. And that money gets allocated per board decision in the budget approval process. This year, 50% of the community improvement fee went into the reserve fund and 50% into the capital improvement fund. So the community improvement fee, the board gets to rotate the dials and change the way it allocates those funds into the reserve and the capital improvement fund. And the capital improvement fund provides funds for new assets and amenities that will benefit the members of the association. So right now the vote that we're going to churn out here next month is for a $4,600 assessment spread over 4 years. Broken down to its core, are we willing to set ourselves on a road of financial stability for the next decade? That's what this assessment will do. So yesterday, Yesterday, because of board member commitments to other things, we had a working meeting at 7:30 in the morning yesterday, because that's the only way I could get us together. And we had one focus, and that was discuss the flexibility we were willing to exercise in the use of our reserve fund, and how we were willing to utilize the community improvement fees and the capital improvement funds to help reduce the ask. And so we're still in the middle of that debate, and that conversation's ongoing. But for people who want to know if we hear you, the reason why that debate rages on is because we're listening. And we're trying to figure out what's the most effective thing to do for us as a community, not only for this problem, but for all the other problems that are out there in front of us that also must be dealt with, that require capital improvement funds. So please be patient. I've given the board until next week. We're going to have to put a stake in the ground. So at the last town hall meeting, we will declare ourselves exactly what's going to be on that ballot. So next Wednesday is our next board meeting. Next slide. So, in reading the gospel here according to Brother John Corona, one of the ways for you as members of our corporation to evaluate the effectiveness of your board is your home values. That's what we're charged with protecting, the asset values of this community. I'm sorry, can I have the next slide? Oh, no, that's the right one. See, sometimes I get help when I don't need it. I want to share with you the legacy of every board member that has gone before us. The average sales price in 2018 of our homes that sold that year were $358,000. In 2023, those values are $565,000. I tell you that because we have an awful lot to be proud of in our community. Sometimes you wouldn't know that if you are plugged into the social media or if you read some of the mail that I get. We have a fantastic community that has a great wealth of amenities and activities for our residents. And our charge is to protect that. And so I need you to understand, this is never far from the front of my mind as I try to help work with these 6 individuals in serving the 3,181 homeowners we have in our community. So I promised you I was going to tell you what the board is committed to relative to option 3. I think I'm going to answer a lot more questions for people and all the information that Ray's been sending to me. We're committed to paying off the Mountain View loan this year if you give us the permission. Next slide. Rick. Thank you. We're committed to paying off the Mountain View loan. We're committed to catching up the funds we need to be able to do the work that we need to do in our reserves. And we're committed to producing the lowest dues possible. What does that mean? Right now we have the highest dues possible for like-type communities in southern Arizona. Campbell's going to tell you how much higher we are than HOA 1 and how that happened over a very brief amount of time. We want to change that, and we can change that with your help. Next slide. We want to move the preserve golf course from 2029 to 2027 for a multitude of reasons, and Campbell's going to tell you what the dollars and cents reasons are. We want to pay cash going forward. You want to know if we've heard your voice? Campbell will tell you he got bludgeoned after we took the loan out for the Mountain View rejuvenation. And so we've heard you. And we've heard all those voices that want that loan paid off expeditiously. We agree with you. And we want to make sure that we position ourselves to pay cash going forward. And we're going to give you this commitment. Every resident in this corporation is going to be treated the same. And that's important for all of us. The number one subject in Ray Adams' report is close or sell a golf course. We're not doing that. We're not going to sell, we're not going to close, and we're not going to repurpose a golf course. They will remain as golf courses, and they will be maintained as golf courses. That's our obligation to this corporation. And our pledge is that all amenities in this community are going to be treated with the same lens. We're not going to look at golf courses any differently than we do tennis courts or pickleball courts or the swimming pools that Campbell loves to swim in. You're probably tired of hearing me. I want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here today and giving me the opportunity to tell you where we stand as a board. We still owe you some more. We're going to continue to work, continue to refine our approach, and maybe save you $1 or $2 in that process. I want to brag a minute for my good friend Campbell Chaney. Campbell Chaney lost the election this past year and got voted off our board. Still wanting to serve the community, he accepted the role as chairman of our finance committee. Something extraordinary is going on in our community right now. We've had 3 unit town hall meetings that Sean Kreiderman and Campbell have facilitated over the past week and yesterday. Last week and yesterday. More than 450 residents have been there. I don't have enough words to describe my admiration and appreciation for your contributions to this community. But I'd like to introduce my good friend Campbell Chaney.
Thanks, Matt. Very kind words, but I'm happy to do it to tell a story, if you will. Next slide, Rick. So I'm going to jump right in. Problem statements. I've got 2 problem statements. When I was on the board, it became very clear very quickly that we were behind in our reserve funding. And looking out over 10 years when we got our 2022 reserve study, kind of confirmed that. So problem statement number 1, we found that the reserve balance is behind by an estimated $4,600 per resident in meeting our near-term reserve expenditure projections to avoid several years of aggressive anti-competitive dues increases, which is what we've been having from 2018 and on. The expenditures are going to be lumpy, with significantly more resources needed at the front end, meaning the first half of the decade, than we need in the second half of the decade, because we're a 25-year-old community and things are wearing out a lot quicker than we had anticipated or planned. Our dues are problem statement number 2. Our dues are not competitive with neighboring HOA, Southern Arizona HOAs. We ran measures of 10 different HOAs. A lot of them are not comparable. We have private roads, many don't. We have golf courses, many don't. So it's not really comparable. Our most comparable is HOA 1, our closest neighbor. Right now we're at over $700. We're $700 higher in dues in 2024 than they are. This dues gap could widen unless immediate and aggressive action is not taken, which could adversely affect home prices and time on the market for resale. Next slide, Rick. So how we get here? A little bit of history. Saddlebrook opened in 1995 and transitioned to self-governance in 2018. Now, self-governance means we pay all the bills. Can't depend on ropes anymore to subsidize us. We're also responsible on an equal basis, as Matt said, to cover all our costs of operating our amenities and maintaining our infrastructure assets and equipment. Again, we pay the bills. In 2024, we're in our 7th year of transition. Our dues, our annual average dues has increased about 8.5% per year since transition. That's much higher than the Phoenix inflation rate, about 4.7%. So you can see where a lot of people are coming to the idea that we just throw money at the problem. We're not very efficient or looking at the bottom line. We are. I'll get to that in the next slide. In fact, why don't we go to the next slide, Rick? So here, let me spend a little time on this. This is a table starting in 2018, fast forwarding through 2024. In 2018, our dues were $2,040, split between operating $1,816 and $224 for our reserve fund. That was an 11% allocation. Wasn't enough in hindsight. Fast forward to 2024, our dues now are $3,500. That's that 8.5% annual increase. But if you look at the operating, the middle column there, operating dues have only increased basically the inflation rate. So inflation, operating this organization, this community is not the problem. What's sucking all the dues away from you is our reserve fund. It's not sufficient. We were not keeping up as we should have. And if you look at the little 1.7%, that's how much our dues increased for operating from 2023 to 2024. Inflation is running around 5% in Phoenix, so much lower. So it isn't the operating of the community that's the issue, it's the reserves, which is why we're here today. Our reserve annual increase has been 25%, and we still need to catch up. So next slide. So why now? Why are we doing this now versus years from now, next year? Because one reason is our dues are not competitive with HOAs. If you look at our 2024, as I just mentioned, we're $700 higher than HOA 1. Last year, 2023, we were $620 higher, and 4 years ago, we were $1 higher. You can see the acceleration of that dues gap. And to do nothing and continue to use dues without assessments like we're doing up until now would largely not keep us at a competitive, would keep us at a competitive disadvantage and probably widen this already wide gap. Next slide. So why now number 2? Our decisions need to be made now on how best to provide the needed resources to keep our community well maintained while bringing us more in line with other HOAs over time. Other HOAs are going to be increasing their dues. If things are done what I hope they do, we can keep our dues flattish at a much lower growth rate, and they will catch up to us sooner. We also see some major assets and facilities that are aging and failing faster than anticipated. For those who live up on the reserve, there's a big sinkhole on Overlook Drive. Just happened a couple of weeks ago. We also have Peregrine Drive, which is also another road up in the preserve, which is doing very poorly and needs major maintenance. Clubhouse Drive, which we all came down today to get here, that's what I drive regularly, so it seems to be getting worse by the month. Major attention needs to be made at Clubhouse Drive. We also had the Mountain View Golf Course pump station fail in 2019. Had to be replaced. It was not planned for that. We had to do an emergency funding for that. Same with the Preserve Clubhouse roof in 2021. It started leaking badly, needed to be replaced ahead of schedule. We also have 3 tennis courts at the Mountain View complex that are nearly unusable due to poor construction design. It's not post-tension, needs to be post-tension. We did fix 2 of them. Next slide, Rick. Which is problem statement number 3. We had to fix 2 of those 5 at the Mountain View complex, the tennis courts. The original bid we got was $160,000. We decided to delay it. Ended up costing us $310,000. The Mountain View repave, the boulevard that we repaved, Mountain View Boulevard last year, it was thought to cost us $680,000, ended up costing $938,000, about 20% higher, by delaying, by waiting. The Mountain View Golf Course renovation was originally scheduled to be $3.7 million, turned out to be $5.7 million, $2 million higher. That's the consequence of waiting too long to get these things done. Next slide. So we're not alone. As I mentioned before, HOA 1 is our closest neighbor. They are in the similar position that we were in 2005, about 6 years after their transition. They decided to have 9 years of annual assessments, totaling adjusting for inflation, about $4,500 over those 9 years. On top of that assessment period, they also increased their HOA dues by 7.5% per year. So you have 7.5% per year dues increases plus assessments. In fact, for 15 years, from 2005 to 2019, they were much higher than us. That differential is about $7,000. So if you look at in total, for those 15 years, they paid $11,500 more than we did. Some people may say that doesn't matter. I think it matters. It shows, next slide. Here it is in picture form. What you see here is the blue line is HOA 1, and the red line is HOA 2. You can see they were about even in 2005 before the dues increases and the assessments of HOA 1 kicked in. You can also see that in 2020 we were also even. They were flattening out their dues where we were starting to increase our dues. So if you look at HOA 1, that top box, the green box with the blue arrows coming down, that is a period where they had no dues increases whatsoever. That's after their assessment period. So you can see once the assessment period is over, dues tend to flatten out. And in the bottom green box just shows that they paid $11,510 more than we did. Next slide. So where do we get our estimates from? Where does that $45 to $50 million come from? Well, basically we defined an asset as having a useful life of more than 3 years and costing more than $5,000. We currently have 598 of those assets, if you will, categorized components, that are tracked. We hire a consulting firm every 3 years to tell us, basically to catch us up to what is the useful life of what's remaining, what needs to be repaired, what needs to be replaced. They throw in an annual inflation rate in there. And currently, if you want to look on the website, that reserve study is on the website. If you look at the home page down near the bottom, under the quick links box, something called financial statements. If you click on that and go to the very bottom, it says other reports, and click on that. That's our 2022 reserve study. All 598 components are in 35 pages of spreadsheets. And you can see in detail what each one is valued at, when each one needs to be replaced, and how much it's going to cost to replace them. Since reserve advisors, our consultants, are not golf course specialists, we actually went to 2 golf people that we know. One is Troon, and the other is Mike Gogol Design, and asked their opinions on what the golf course replacement would be for the reserve. And that is incorporated in that $45 to $50 million. And as I mentioned before, next slide. So where do these, next slide, Rick. So where do these dollars go, as I mentioned? But a couple of things I want to point out are roads. We have over 50 miles of roads, private roads, which we have to maintain and repair when necessary and repave when necessary. Over the next 10 years, we'll have many large projects. Half of our roads are going to reach 30 years of age. From what I understand is that they were not built with the highest quality. I'm not an engineer, but I drive Clubhouse right, and I can agree with that. We also have those 3 tennis courts I mentioned that need to be, some say, I don't play tennis, but some say that it's unsafe to play on those 3 courts. They need to be addressed. We need a common area maintenance facility. We really don't have one. That's a long-term project. Most of that's going to come out of the Capital Improvement Fund. And as Matt mentioned, we need the preserved golf course irrigation replacement, pump station, as well as the golf course renovation. And most importantly of all, the Mountain View debt. It seems to be job number 1 amongst this board to get that paid off as quickly as possible. Right now, after our February payment, the principal outstanding on that debt is $4.87 million, or about $1,500 a resident, payable over the next 4 years. It's due in 4 years. Future interest payments will be about $722,000, or about $227 per resident. We want to pay that off. And that option 3 will allow us to do that. So next slide. So here's a pie chart I came up with. Matt mentioned 46% of the future reserve fund expenditures are going to be for golf. There it is. Those are the blue pieces of the pie. It's divided into golf equipment. We have over 100 pieces of golf course maintenance equipment in our inventory. That's 11%. The golf loan, 12%. The golf course loan is paid off. The division of the pie will change. The Mountain View golf course renovation is only 4% because we've done the work. You can probably match that with the loan. And the preserve golf course renovation is about 19%. Roads, 50 miles of roads, they said, are going to be 23%. The Mountain View complex, which Matt described, is the administration building, the arts and crafts center, the mesquite building, the clubhouse, and the tennis courts. Those are all included in that purple pie. And the property site, that's walls, curbs, all the vehicles we own, you see driving around, the trucks, the common area maintenance equipment, those types of things, that's in the property site. And then lastly, the desert view, where we're sitting, and the preserve clubhouse, about 4%. Again, if you want to see in detail where the costs are going, you can go to the reserve study. It's all right there. So, what happened middle of last year? As the board chairman, I had the chair of the finance committee, to create a panel of finance committee members and advisors to study the problem. We started last summer, and it went through culminated in December 13th, where we had a town hall meeting. So what I instructed the team to do is develop strategies and scenarios for reserve expenditures over the 10 years, explore all funding options, the best possible outcomes. That include dues increases, both aggressive and moderate, to match annual expenditure needs. Also special assessments. It became known very quickly that just using dues would probably end up at about $6,000 a year if we just used dues without special assessments. Seemed like something we didn't want to pursue, so we didn't really pursue it past that. So special assessments kind of became how much, when to assess it, when to jumpstart it, use future debt, not use future debt, combine the debt with smaller assessments, annual community improvement fee allocations, dues increases, a lot of stuff we threw out there and modeled it. For hundreds of hours we did modeling. We also looked at researched expenditure timing for optimum financial advantage, meaning pulling things forward, pushing things back, mostly major projects. And also prepayment of the Mountain View debt. How can we get that Mountain View debt off the books as quickly as possible? Those were all the scenarios that I instructed the Replacement Reserve Analysis Group, or affectionately called the RRA Group, to come up with. Well, next slide. So the integrated models. We developed integrated models using both operating fund and reserve fund. Integrating meaning that if you put more money into the reserve fund, what's that going to do to the operating fund? We had integrated models. If you're going to reallocate community improvement fees, how does that go through the integrated model? We put very complex integrated models together. We used a 3% annual inflation factor, was applied through 2033. Again, the multiple scenarios, pushing projects back, pulling projects forward, using debt, not using debt. Very complicated models were created. And basically, of the dozen or so funding scenarios that we did real research on, we boiled it down to 3 that seemed to me the most viable. Matt mentioned those. Option 1, 6 board-approved assessments with a new loan for the preserve irrigation system. Option 2, the most expensive, 6 board-approved assessments without a new loan, because you're pushing the money up front, you're not borrowing the money. And option 3, a community improved assessment, meaning a large assessment over $300. The board can only approve assessments on a yearly basis of $300 or less. So anything over that, the community has to approve it. And that's 50% plus 1 of those who vote. So it's important to vote. And that's be payable over 4 years and no new loan. And also the option 3 enabled the Mountain View debt to be paid off this year. So kind of looking at it on a line graph. So here's a picture. So what it tells you is, and this is the assessments plus dues. And obviously option 3 is the green line. Very heavy upfront costs with the assessments, which is why the line is so much higher than the other 2. But then after the assessment period is over in 2027, starting in 2028, because there's no more assessments, the dues fall to something very comfortable, $3,700 to $3,800, or between those two. And then it flattens out, just like HON was able to flatten out its dues once its assessment period is over. This would be flattened out. And the reason for that is because we don't need to allocate as much money to the reserve as we can start dialing back the allocation to the reserve substantially and putting that money, redirecting that money into operations. The other two, the orange line in the middle is with the loan. The reason it's lower than the number 2 is because you're borrowing money again. You're paying interest, but you're spreading it out further, so you don't have to pay as much. And then option 2 is the most expensive. It's going to end basically at about $700 gap for the option 3. Now, next slide, please. So after the first town hall, which we presented that slide, someone said, why don't you just take out the assessment portion so we can see what the dues will be? So I did that. So here is another line chart basically showing the gap between the 3 options. As I said, it's a $700 gap between number 3 and number 2. So it's like, how do you want to pursue this? Do you want to have lower dues once the assessment period is over, or are you going to have higher dues once the assessment period is over? Again, the choice will be yours to vote. Not on these 3, but to vote on yes or no on option 3. And the last 3 slides, for those who just who like numbers, here's a very complicated table, which I was asked to put back in, which I did. I'm a accommodating guy. So this is option number 1. Basically, this year, 2024, we all know we've got our semi-annual POA statement. We paid $750 for the first half of the year. So that's under that line 2024. You can carry it forward to the second half payment in the middle of the table, another $1,750 plus a $300 assessment, and that equals $3,800 with the assessment. And you go down 6 years of assessments. What's important is 2029, the assessment is no longer 300, it's only 150. So what you're getting is 5 years of 300 and 1 year of 150, plus more or less more aggressive dues increases than option 3. So the next table, this is option 2, which you're going to more or less see the same type of assessment, same type of table here. You've got $300 assessments twice a year for 6 years. And then you've got the third one, option 3. This is the important one, which you're going to see. Let me go back. Actually, Rick, go back one. Option 2. If you look down at the bottom right number, if you can see that, I hope you can see that. The bottom right number says the annual dues in 2023 are going to be $4,428. Now the next slide. Now I'll start with that. Versus option 3, we're in that second, at the very bottom right hand. In 2033, the dues are expected to be, these are $3,715. Now these are projections. We cannot predict the future with any great accuracy. This is our best projections using a 3% inflation rate. Now I don't know if 3% is the right number. Nobody knows. But this, you can kind of get the idea that there would be a very large gap between these options, no matter what the inflation rate is and what the world's going to look like. But if you raise, now, next. So what happens after the assessment period? We have financial flexibility, really no matter what option is chosen, whether it's the upfront one, option 3, or if the board decides to go one of those other pathways, option 1 or option 2, you're going to have financial flexibility once the assessment period is over. And again, for the same reason that for all 3, you can start dialing back how much you allocate to the reserve, because the reserve basically has been built to a satisfactory level. And you can start dialing back the allocation reserve and start increasing and redirecting those numbers to the operating fund. Next slide. So again, repeating, where are we now? As I said, we're behind by an estimated $4,600 per resident in meeting our planned near-term reserve expenditures to avoid several years of aggressive anti-competitive dues increases. We're trying to keep the dues increases as low as possible. Next slide. So our conclusion. Basically, an upfront community-approved special assessment up to a maximum of $4,600. I think the board has made that tenet, a maximum of $4,600, payable over the 4 years, followed by smaller than otherwise dues increases. Or the board has a pathway that they're going to have smaller assessments over several years and have higher dues increases. So what's the benefit of, say, a number 3, option 3? Well, if we pay off the loan by the end of 2024, we could save $450,000 in interest payments, and we can unlock the $3 million we have to hold at the bank, earning 1%, and reinvest that at a current rate of, say, 5%. That 4% differential is about $120,000 a year. Now, interest rates ebb and flow, but right now interest rates are about 5% for the risk-free rate of treasuries at the lower end of the maturity curve. So that's $120,000 we could unlock if we paid off the loan sooner rather than later. And also the preserve golf course, because of those examples I gave earlier of not doing things now, but putting it off, is probably more than likely the preserve golf course is going to be a lot more expensive by pushing it back several years. So doing it sooner rather than later would likely save money. And Matt, that is my presentation.
Next slide, Rick. So in case I didn't make myself clear in my first notes, I'm stomping my foot. This is what your board wants to accomplish. We want to pay off this loan. We want to grow interest income that we're not receiving today. We want to enjoy reduced construction costs. Anybody that knows anything about pushing construction costs to the future knows that your 3% is not going to cover the rise in construction cost. We're going to complete this catch-up. We're going to meet our responsibilities to the community. And we really want your help because we want to produce the most competitive HOA we can relative to annual HOA dues. And we want to pay cash. We want to pay our way as we go forward. Next slide. So somebody asked for this chart for those that need help with their budget planning. This is your budget chart for the worst case scenario, as Campbell put out here. If we come back to you next month and say it is $4,600, it's $1,000 in 2024, it's $1,225, $1,226, and $1,227. Because I can't help but be a little ornery with you today. Next slide. So I actually sat down and figured this out. The first time I did it was on the back of a napkin. Somebody had fired me up with a kind email. And so I wanted to figure out in my head, what am I really talking about here? Ladies and gentlemen, we can create the kind of community we can all be proud of, and we can create 10 years of financial stability and security with the yes vote on option 3. That's what you get. A predictable approach to the next decade without surprises other than the unknown unknowns that only God has visibility on today. For $3.15, we are asking for your support. Next slide. And here's why. We truly do want to be the premier active adult community of choice in southern Arizona, and producing financial stability and predictability for the next decade. We will sustain and or enhance our ability to compete with other active adult communities here in southern Arizona. With your support, we will make this happen. I thank you for your attention and your participation today, and we look forward to your questions and comments. Thank you.
How many people play golf?
Can you, before you start, anyone that wants to ask, can you give us a name and a unit and a lot number?
Alan Jacobson. I've lived here 25 years and I'm not a golfer.
Adam?
L.M. Jacobson,
Okay.
Unit 17.
Great.
How many people play golf? 30%. And there's about 6,000 people here. So 70% is subsidizing the 30%. Because golf is subsidized. And according to the sheet given here of the statement, golf only lost $1,347,993 last year. That's very nice that 30% of the people who play golf are being taken care of by the other 70%. Very, very nice. It's wonderful to be a golfer. It's wonderful to be, all the numbers that were given today, everything is golf, 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 for 30%. That's the way we run our community. The other 70% don't count. This is nothing more than wrong, wrong, and wrong. There is no reason that 70% have to support 30%. Golf should not be subsidized any more than anybody else in this community should be subsidized. You pay if you play, and not somebody else pays while I play. And if you're a golfer here this morning, you should come up and kiss the feet of the people here, because they're going to take care of you. But if you're not a golfer, you know what's happening. You're being taken for a ride, a very bad ride. There is no reason to subsidize golf or any other subject here, and the board's idea is very nice. It's not going to cost too much. Well, it's costing too much already. And there's no reason, if you lost $1.3 million last year playing golf, you'll probably lose more. As there's only 30% play, it's a wonderful, wonderful game. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Janine Grippo, Unit 49, Lot 109. Hopefully you've been reading my comments, but somehow I don't think so. The board options that I've seen today here have not changed a bit since the first ones I saw, therefore have not incorporated any of the feedback that they've received in the comments, focus groups, unit meetings, or direct board communications. We will be asked to vote for option 3, raising more than $14 million for the reserve over the next several years, with $6 million of that needed to pay off the Mountain View loan. Okay, $6 million minus the 18 months you would have already paid by the time we pay our next assessment. On a loan that we would not have supported, many of us would not have supported. However, this ask for funds has not been supported by a designated reserve spending plan, and at the focus groups I attended, it was clear that capital improvement projects are included in these calculations. A large portion of the redesign of the reserve golf course. You showed the slide for Mountain View Reserve. There was the must-haves, there's the middle columns, and should-haves, and then there's the more aspirational projects. Yet in the preserve, you indicated the same slide, everything to the right of the must-haves is a capital improvement. Yet, that is figured into the 9 million that you have on the calculations. A remodel of the Mountain View Bar, Grill, Clubhouse. You were remodeling that when I moved here 10 years ago. So why do we need that again? Isn't that a capital improvement? So rather than continuing to spit in the wind, which is what I feel I'm doing, I am recommending that we vote no for option 3 and begin the process of replacing retiring board members with fiscally responsible board members who will delineate between maintenance and capital improvement projects.
Sherry Groupie, Unit 45, Lot 73. I think we can all agree that the loan is costing us a lot of money. It's costing us $120,000 in lost revenue for the millions that we have to keep there. It's costing us $420,000 a year, costing $420,000 a year for the interest. Overall, $540,000 a year. That needs to be paid off. Sounds like everyone is in agreement on that. One thing I want to do is break down $4,600 per household. That's what it is to each and every one of us, including each of you. Of that $4,600, $1,325 is needed to pay off that loan. That needs to be done. $298 will be going to reserves. $2,976, almost $3,000 of that $4,600 is going towards the preserve golf course. That is to move it up from 229, where it was scheduled in the reserves, to 2027. It's been touted that that will save us $595,000 by eliminating inflation costs. What wasn't mentioned is it will be costing us money that we could take that money, invest it at 5%, earning, $950,000 for a net positive earning of $355,000 by leaving it where it currently is. If we reduce, and I would propose a different option to look at, if we reduce the initial assessment to $2,000, we can pay off the loan, buy a new pump for the golf course, put money in our reserves. When we have a specific plan for the preserve golf course, hopefully based on some of our knowledge we learned from Mountain View, when the residents are given a vote of the scope of the work that should be done and whether it should be phased or all done at once, then we go back to an additional assessment to get that paid for. Thank you.
My name is Steve Duke. I'm in Unit 23. I have a few things. Oh, you need to be, okay, I'll get it really close. I think, first of all, it's one thing to say you want to pay as you go forward, but it's another thing to say it's in writing. And I would like to see something as a document that says that the board now and in the future will be held accountable for the statement, we want to pay going forward. It cannot be something that's just said you want to do that. You have to assure that that is what's going to happen. Two, I'm curious, as a straw poll here, how many of the board members play golf? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of 8. Of 7.
I'm not a board member.
Oh, great. 5 of 7. That's a much higher percentage than 30%. and that may be influencing part of your decisions. And the other thing I want to say is, obviously, when these golf courses, I understand, were purchased, yes, in 2018, is that correct? I just read it on this. I don't know, I'm a new member. What studies were done on what debt would be incurred when these golf courses were purchased? I mean, these studies are done on reserves all the time in HOAs. I've been on a number of HOA boards, and these studies are done all the time. So when you come up with a $15 million sudden, I will call it a crisis, then what happened to the previous studies that somehow missed this? That's a curious thing to me. I don't understand that, just because I know reserves studies are done over regular times, and you know what's going to come down the pipeline. There should be no surprises there. That's all I have to say.
Andrea Moldberg, Unit 42, Lot 72, I think. Thank you for the hard work. Thank you for being honest with us about the trouble that we're in. Please think about the fact that there are over 20 homes in the preserve for sale right now. This is unprecedented. It signals people are scared at the financial conditions that we're facing. Please do not confuse us. You want to reduce our dues. Thank you. You want to pay off the loans. Thank you. But a current owner looks at dues and assessments as money out of their pocket. So think long-term. Think about lowering costs as well as generating revenue. I am disappointed in hearing that no consideration is given for repurposing, selling, or closing a golf course. It may not be the right answer to do one of those things, but I need to understand why not. Please recognize that we are financially concerned, and some of us hope to die before some of these payments are made. So please consider different options to keep us financially solvent but also competitive. I wish right now I'd bought an HOA 1. I wish that the reciprocal agreement did not give advantages to HOA 1. And I wish that we were not spending some money in places that I wouldn't. But I'm a cheap Minnesotan. So please consider what you are doing and recognize the concern this community has.
I guess I got to go to this one. Yeah, okay. Steve Lindquist, Unit 45, Lot 98. First of all, I think that's Andrea, is her name. She's 100% right on. I mean, you guys have heard me come up and talk before, so I'm not new here. But this woman knows, she's feeling what everybody here is feeling, exactly what she just said. I've got a couple other questions, though. First of all, I'm not a golfer, but I'm being told by golfers, and I'm hearing, first of all, we just spent $6 million on a golf course. I can't tell you. I've not had one golfer come and tell me that they like playing the new course. In fact, I've had them tell me that they are no longer buying annual passes because they don't like the new course. So, along with that, I want to ask, why are we using the same designer for the preserve, assuming this actually gets happen? Because I'm told that, and I'm not a golfer, but I'm told by golfers that, you know, you really want to have a different designer do one course than the other, because you don't want two courses that look the same. You want to be able to have something you can market to different people to play different courses. So you might want to rethink that whole thing. I'm with the last lady. I'm going to ask the question. Why are we so adamant about not repurposing a golf course or a portion of a golf course? I don't know what the right answer is, but I do know that I read a lot, and there's a lot of communities that are struggling with golf courses just like we are, and there's a good number of them that have taken and repurposed maybe a portion, maybe 9 holes. You know, the ideal course to repurpose would have been Mountain View. Take 9 holes and repurpose it and go to 27. But you've already spent $6 million there, so that kind of screws up that as an idea. Otherwise, you're just blowing that money. So, but I'm wondering, what is the animation, the purpose of not even considering any of these things? I think that needs to be answered. Option 3, Campbell, I'd like to ask you, at the end of 2028 and beyond, if you look at that green line on the chart, goes up, comes down, now it's kind of floating along flat out here. What I want to know, though, is at the end of 28, what can we expect? What should the estimated balance be in our reserve account at that point in time? Do you have any idea?
That really, is this turned on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, just closer.
Well, it really depends on when the preserve, I mean the actual balance in the fund. I can tell you where it's supposed to be at 2033 off the top of my head. Otherwise, I got to look it up.
Okay.
We'd have to look it up.
Okay, at 33, where will we be?
About between $6 and $8 million.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. One other thing I wanted to comment on was the comment, I think it was you, Matt, that made it here a little bit ago, about just one question and I'll go. You're talking about everybody's being treated the same. I'm going to tell you, that's not been the case. I happen to be a pickleball member, and I can tell you that the pickleball members were asked, if we want pickleball courts, by God, we had to go raise the funds to build those courts. And we raised, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but I'm guessing between the 2 times we built those courts, there's got to be 80, 85% of that money was paid for out of pickleball players' pockets. So, that being the case, why isn't it true for golf? Now, I know you'll tell me, well, golf was an amenity and pickleball wasn't. Mute case, they're both amenities now, but we ought to be looking at that. Thank you.
Good morning, Board. I live in Unit 43 on the golf course. I've been here 12 years. Baron? Yeah, B-A-R-O-N. My question, well, first of all, let me say I've served on two boards in California, so I'm familiar, and it's really a thankless job, and you guys have done quite an amazing job with your presentation. However, my question has to do with non-performing assets or non-performing entities, if you will, the restaurants, the golf courses, and that type of thing, and subsidizing. So I'm curious to know, since I know that the board is committed to keeping all the assets that we came with here 12 years ago, 2 golf courses, all these restaurants. So my question has to do with what is the board doing to either generate income for the golf courses, which is a big entity, or the restaurants, or is the board looking at cutting back or reducing some of the staff, overhead, like most corporations? After all, we're not a charity, right? So what is the board doing to either make money or cut back on some of the expenses on these things so we don't have to keep subsidizing? Fair question? No.
Yeah, I guess I'll take that on. I wish I had a magic wand that could change the situation overnight. We don't. So what are we doing? The $6 million investment in Mountain View was to produce a state-of-the-art course that people wanted to play. Today, 107 of our residents have their annual memberships at HOA 1. I haven't done a poll of those 107 people, but I know by discussions, they find the playing conditions over there better. So when people find the playing conditions better and they take $500,000 of revenue from HOA2 to HOA1, it leaves a mark. So if you sit here and you analyze how you're going to compete with HOA1, you have to deliver a product the equal of HOA1's. Now, we've been in pursuit of that for the last 5 years. The first investment this community has made in its golf enterprise was in the Mountain View Golf Course. Yesterday, a gentleman stood up and said, "That's the worst daggone golf course in Saddlebrook. It's dead." Well, he was describing the Bermuda. It's dormant. And because you put down brand new sod, you have to give it a growing season to heal itself before you can do the overseed. So it can look as pretty as HOA1 or the preserve. The preserve looks better than it's looked any time in the 10 years I've been here. Okay? That's the grass on top that has nothing to do with the repairs that need to be done. So what we're trying to do is improve the product so we get our own residents to come back to our golf enterprise and play their golf here. And we want to encourage, through the Troon strategies that we're discussing, is to be able to improve the preserve golf course, which they believe will be a premier attraction in the state of Arizona, and we can charge higher rates to attract people to come here and play on our courts. So, I hate to say it, but we have to spend the money to improve the product before we can improve the outcomes when it comes to
And the restaurants.
The
For instance,
revenues.
the restaurants are operating in a deficit.
I'm glad you asked about the restaurants. I think that's Steve's favorite subject, to be honest with you. The restaurants, we just completed we brought in a consultant, Real Foods, and they just completed their analysis and they gave us their preliminary report. Walter and I and some others, Chuck, we received that report 2 weeks ago. And for the most part, most of the issues that are going on in food and beverage are actually inside, what do they call it, industry norms. Our problem is labor. And Chuck, would you agree that was the takeaway? Is that we've got to get our arms around why our labor costs are out of range. Well, we learned an interesting thing in that, that report. If we hit every one of their KPIs, nailed it, every one of their key process indicators, we could expect an annual subsidy of $250,000. And so people that think that we can break even in our restaurants or that we can make money in our restaurants, we just not set up to do that. So what we're trying to do is get our hands around with this consulting advice, and Chuck's the lead for this for our board, and he's aggressively involving himself in how do we reduce the subsidy. We're not going to eliminate it.
Is there someone on the board or that is dedicated to looking at the operational side of it to try to make money or to cut back or, to run it like a business? Is there someone that actually does that?
Maybe I didn't make myself clear.
I'm sorry, Matt?
Chuck is our point person, and we're going to look at all aspects. Walter is convening a meeting next week to have this very conversation, and we'll be able to report more out after we have that. But Chuck Hill down there is going to be our point person to help us find ways to enhance our experience in F&B.
Okay, I think you share my concern that if you keep running at a deficit, at some point it's going to, Thank you.
I'm Vern Luce, and I'm a resident of Unit 24, or 42, I'm sorry, in the Preserve, Lot 4. And I would like to encourage the board to reconsider the early payoff of the Mountain View loan. And the reason is one of the basic principles of debt financing and one of its advantages is, yes, you are paying interest expense going forward as required by the loan, but each of the dollars that you're applying to interest expense going forward is, in an inflationary environment, worth less than the dollars from the last year. So if the Federal Reserve is successful in maintaining their target inflation rate of 2% per year, the dollars that you use to pay next year, the interest expense, are worth 2% less than they were this year. So you've borrowed $6 million, you've spent it on the current, at the current price level. Now going forward, you can save yourself money in the sense you're paying a fixed amount. I'm assuming the interest rate on the loan is fixed. So you're paying with dollars that are worth 2% less every year. So please reconsider your decision to pay that loan off early. Thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah, one thing you need to keep in mind about that loan, with all the factors, we're paying about 9.5% interest on that. If we're paying 7%, that may be it, but paying 9.5%, there's really no reason to keep that loan around.
Hank Malter, Unit 46, Lot 126. I'd like to ask all these people that just got up before me and wonder why they ever moved here. I've been here for 20 years, and I've watched a lot of boards and a lot of transition go on between RCI and here. I moved here to retire, plan on living here until I die, or my wife kicks me out. And I went ahead and I've seen a lot of things change. The biggest problem that I see is, number one, all the golf players, when you're talking about golf, that went to HOA 1 are costing us money. But the thing they don't realize, like a lot of people here don't realize, our dues are predicated on our support for our community. Now, if you don't go to the restaurants and eat, they're not going to make money, number one. Number two, when you ask some people that have lived here for a while, when's the last time you ate at our restaurants? Oh, I don't like it because 7 years ago, something was wrong and I couldn't get it fixed. I mean, this is a bunch of bull. So just think of it from the aspect of the people that are not saying anything. Your silent majority. Oh, 30% of the people play golf. Well, 70 or 100% get advantage of coming over that hill and seeing this community with the golf courses and loving it and living here. The Preserve, 20 years ago, was the first time that they opened it up. We have built, and the people there have built up an equity and spent thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars for views, to see the mountains and see the golf courses. Now they're bitching about why we're going to pay $3.15 to go forward. And then I also heard that we want to guarantee you what our dues are going to be 10 years from now. Hey, we can't even guarantee what the government's going to do tomorrow. So come on, knock it off. Just understand what you got and enjoy what you have. But we are, one more thing, we are unique in the sense that I think we're the only HOA that has 2 HOAs that they're fighting with. And, you know, there's no other place in Southern California or Southern Arizona or in California that I've ever heard of 2 HOAs on one property. So do what you're doing. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
I'm Carol Sapancic, Unit 15. I've been here 28 years. My husband and I moved here because of the golf and the tennis. Sad to say he passed, but I'm still here and I'm enjoying everything. I know you're true and your best, and I understand we have a lot of amenities. The thing that just hit me lately is with the Quilt Club, which I have belonged to a long time, started with, we pay now $1,000 to use the ballroom for our quilt show. So there is assessments happening to help this fund. And I understand it's a rough job and you're all volunteers. Thank you.
I'm Mike Lewis. I'm Unit 49, Lot 79. I was fascinated with the true truth that has come out recently. And so it's like the implication is that the board has the real truth, don't believe some of the things that are being said about what's going on. Well, I can tell you this. I was a part of the group that produced the document that was handed out when you walked in the door today. And clearly there are more than 3 options that would solve the dilemma. You chose number 3 because it drives, based on 1 and 2, it drives people to vote for your number 3. But one of the things that fascinated me about number 3 is this. I sat in a meeting yesterday, a working group meeting that you held. 4 of the board members said, we can't make any promises about what the next board's going to do. So why in the world would you flatten out the dues in those latter years? Let me tell you why, I think. This is my personal opinion. By the way, the correct number on active playing golfers in this community, and I'm talking about people that play 2 times a month or more, and if that's wrong, Matt produced the documents that prove it, it's less than 8%. So that number is worse than has been projected even at 30%. And so in reality, the subsidy is even greater than that first gentleman recommended. Now, is there necessarily a problem with that? No. What was missing in the presentation by Matt today was the $985,000 loss that golf threw out this year, the historical 500,000 plus losses that golf has brought us, and without metrics that support why you can make a difference versus we're going to win those 103 back. By the way, 2 of the 4 people that helped draft the document, they're golfers, and they're not coming back because they want to stay over at 1. So the reality is, I think unless you're willing to give metrics to back up your position, that there are other options than the 3 you're laying out there. And in all fairness to the majority of the 92% in this community that are not active golfers, I think you're doing us a disservice by not taking other options.
My comments will be pretty brief because I really wasn't prepared when I walked into the room. But I want to say thank you to this board for bringing us to a point of reality.
Can we have your name and lot? Name and unit?
Yeah, sorry. Mark Gingrich, Unit 32, Lot 75. I knew when I moved here we had roads, we had clubhouses, we had roofs, and yes, I knew we had golf courses. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I'm here. I also knew that golf courses wear out. They wore out where I lived before. Irrigation systems wear out. So yes, I knew expenses would come. I am disappointed that previously we waited so long to bring forward actuality. I don't think we should be surprised if we look at our neighboring HOA and what they went through with assessments and addressing reality. I think most HOAs, when they take over from the developer, are faced with reality and deferred expenses. So most of all, thank you. Thanks for bringing us forward to where we are having tough discussions. But they have to happen. And for my vote, let's do it where we can get into a good place, face the truth, enjoy the community that we can be proud of. Thank you.
1
My name's David Horner. I'm from Unit 47. I don't know my lot number. I can give you my address if you want it. Two questions to Campbell. I mean, I don't mean to pick on Campbell, but he is the architect of this funding scenario.
I'm used to it. Go ahead.
Okay. The lady that was first or second up here that talked about the opportunity cost to the individual owners versus the savings to the corporation. I don't think there's any doubt that accelerating building in an inflationary environment is going to save money if you do it faster. But it does cost the individuals some money. I just want an acknowledgement, I guess, that there is validity to that argument that it is costing money to the individuals.
Sure. Opportunity cost, I would say every individual has their own opportunity cost.
Absolutely.
As an institutional investor for 30 years, my opportunity cost is about 20+%. That's about what I make on my investments every year. Other people, they like putting into a CD at 3.5%. That's their opportunity cost. So yes, there's opportunity
and some
cost.
stick it in the coffee can in the backyard.
And then there's no opportunity cost.
Absolutely.
Well, inflation.
Right. Okay. It's a real argument, though.
There's no argument. I mean, you're correct.
The option 2 paints a pretty bleak picture of the direction that dues will go without the $4,600 assessment. I think the gap was $700 or something between the two.
Without using debt.
Correct. Yes. You don't in your total receipts from dues, you don't break out the portion between operations and reserve funding. But it's calculable based on the percentage you show.
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
We've put that in there.
so in option 2, it looks like the dues, the total collections from dues for operations is about $1,000 higher than it is under option 3. Is there any reason, regardless of the funding source, that dues would be higher? The total collections from dues on operations?
I'd have to look it up. I don't have it top of my head.
It looks to me like it's about $1,000 higher. Okay, so that would reduce the gap some if you equalize the dues for operations between the two scenarios.
Well, the idea is let's get the assessment period out of all three. Assessment period is over. It's now just dues allocated between operations and reserves.
But that should be equal under either scenario.
It's not equal. I mean, right now it's 70-30. 70% of your dues go to operations, 30% goes to reserves.
And the operational cost, the budget needed to fund operations, that shouldn't be impacted by whatever.
No, the costs, I'm not sure what the costs are. I mean, you're talking allocation of dues, right? Or
well, I'm talking about the total payments. You got over the 10-year period, the homeowners are paying $43,000 under
between 40 and 43,000. Between the three options, you're paying between 40 to 43,000.
Well, a portion of that is coming from dues that fund operations, and those two should be equal under either scenario.
Well, actually, you can have less going into the reserves once the reserves have been funded.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you're saying the total payment is going to stay the same, and it's just going to be the allocation between operations and reserve.
Correct. Right.
Operations shouldn't be impacted one way or the other under either scenario.
Not operating, no. If you talk about the costs, no.
Okay, and it looks like it is. The other question, well, take a look at that. Okay, you want to come up and then I'll circle back? That's fine. Circle back. Okay, I'll circle back.
Your comment about the opportunity cost, there's also about $1 million in Saddlebrook opportunity cost that you would incur by moving the preserve courses redo from 29 to 27.
No, I understand, but you're factoring that option 3. That's already. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Linda Bowers, and I'm in Unit 45. Lot 66. That's on Overlook. And I'm here to first compliment you because, whoa, what a job you guys have in your hand. And you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all of the time. We all know that. So thank you very much. And I understand why you want to build up that reserve. But what I don't understand is the people in our community who moved into a golf community and having all the amenities they have, who want to get rid of the golf course. Why did you move here? If you don't like it, there's something you can do. But that's not my main reason why I'm standing at this microphone. I'm concerned about the budget being enough to carry forward the repairs that we will be doing on all of Robeson's roads to the south of our community where they are building the new homes. We have inferior roads throughout our community, and I drive one almost every day, and that's the Peregrine. It's been patched enough. We haven't apparently come to a conclusion as to who is responsible for it. It will be a substantial amount of money to fix that road. And on Overlook, as you know, you just dealt with a big sinkhole, which I'm hearing an amount that it's costing to fix that I'm surprised with. And who is going to pay for this? Apparently, as far as I understand, and maybe you can answer the question for me, who's paying for that repair? Or is this another one of these things where, well, we don't know who's going to pay for it and we don't know who's responsible? Supposedly, from what I understand, it's inferior quality of road, which you can see every day you drive down Peregrine. And if you want to have a good sight of it, drive at nighttime. And I'm curious as to how many of you actually have drove up there. And we didn't just have our sinkhole on Overlook. We have new homes to the north of the preserve who have had sink homes while they had construction. I don't believe we fixed them. I think the construction people patched them up ahead of time. And that we are going to be having to repair those roads. And if we don't have a hand on what Robeson is doing to the south of us as far as the quality of roads, that is going to become a huge financial burden to us going forward and with those reserve funds that we are already trying to build up. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Bob Corley, Unit 42, Lot 126. Full disclosure, I'm a golfer. I live on the 8th hole of the preserve golf course. I enjoy the view of the golf course and the mountains. I contend that none of you in this room or in Saddlebrook Ridge would be here if it weren't for golf courses. Robeson doesn't build a community for retirement folks without building golf courses. They're a focal point. There's not the only thing we have, but it's a focal point. You think about repurposing our golf courses. Think about Rancho Vistoso, Canoa Ranch, some of the places who let their golf courses go. What happened to the homeowners' values? I don't want my value to drop 30 or 40% just because we're going to turn my golf course into a desert. I think you need to look beyond. We're either going to have to pay now or we're going to pay more later. And I appreciate the work you guys are doing. Thank you.
I'll try to make this a little shorter. I think between the two options, the gap between the dues between option 2 and option 3, I don't think it's as big as you have painted it to be. I think there is still going to be a gap. The balance in the replacement reserve fund in 2033 under option 3 is going to be at least projected to be $8.1 million. What's the balance in the replacement reserve fund projected to be under option 2?
I don't know the top of my head what that is.
10.8 million.
Okay, I'll take your word.
2.7 million higher. That's got to drive the dues down. If 8 million's the number, why do we need almost 11 million? So that'll take care of some dues. I'll send you my analysis and you can look it over. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is L.M. Jake Jacobson. I've already spoken, and I'm not going to repeat what I said. But I want to bring to the attention of the board that part of the reason our roads are so bad, the board authorized without a vote for the roads to be torn up by a company putting in telephone lines. Nobody remembers that? There are holes all over where they dug and put in. There was no vote on it. So we are paying for what the board did.
Hi, my name's Michael Buckley, Unit 36, Lot 36. First of all, I want to thank all of you for all your hard work too. I know it's got to be a lot of pressure that you're under, and I really appreciate it. I live on the golf course on Mountain View hole number 2, and I would be very upset if Mountain View or the preserve was repurposed, even though I don't play golf anymore because of some injuries and things. But to say that all the people that are on the golf course are going to have to throw away their lot premiums of hundreds of thousands of dollars that they paid here, that is absolutely asinine. That is not going to work. No one will support that. Well, there might be people here that will support it, but just be realistic. But here's my point, or my ask, I guess. Living on the golf course, I've watched the construction, the reset of Mountain View, and we've spent $6 million to now have what I would call one of the most god-awful courses in the state of Arizona. Now, I know that Matt has promised and Dan has promised that it's going to look better when it's all done, but we were promised that it would be done in October. Here it is almost the end of February, and there's still no opening in sight for the front 9 of Mountain View Golf Course. So what I'm saying is we've got to get that looking good first before we start really saying we're going to do the same thing to the preserve golf course. We've got to have the Mountain View course go for a couple of years healing and then maybe looking good before we say we're going to do the exact same thing to the preserve golf course and have it so we can have 2 of the most god-awful golf courses in the state of Arizona. We do not want that. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Alan Grotsky. I live in Unit 23. A couple of questions. I want to make sure I understood it, that when we're eligible to vote. The board will be presenting just one option. Is that correct, Matt?
Yes.
And just my own edification, in prior elections, RCI has been able to vote. Are they going to be able to vote on this issue going before us? And how many votes will they have per, is it still 3? Thank you.
The answer is that Robeson gets 3 votes for every unsold lot. So he's probably got about 60 to 75 lots left, maybe in that area. So he'll get, if he chooses to do it, he could put 3 votes for every one of those. I don't know that he's paid a heck of a lot of attention to what's going on here. One thing I wanted to point out, and we had some of the people leave, but we talked about repurposing the golf courses, and the board has made the decision we are not doing it. And the reason we're not doing it is because we are not going to destroy the amenities that everybody moved here for. No different than we're not going to close the 3 swimming pools. We're not going to tear up all the tennis courts. We're not going to close the theater. We're not going to eliminate all the meeting rooms that you guys all enjoy and you play your card clubs. You moved it for it, and that's what you're going to get, and that's what you're going to keep, and that's what our legal obligation is to do. I personally, being the treasurer, we've done a little bit. I did a little bit of looking about repurposing the golf courses because I was curious, and repurposing them in either way costs us a lot more money. So the perception that it's going to save money by closing the golf courses is because you just don't know the facts. So if you want to make it into a park with keeping the grass, the maintenance costs basically don't change a heck of a lot. You have to fill in the sand traps, but you still have to pay for mowing and everything, so it goes down a little bit. And you still have to fertilize. You still have to put the irrigation system in because you got to water. So that you don't save anything on the irrigation system. What you do lose is $1.7 million of income every year that you no longer get because it's not a golf course. So unless you want to charge $20 a person for somebody that can walk in the park, you've lost all that income. So the cost actually goes up, all right? If you want to repurpose it as a park, it's even worse because we know how much it costs to tear up all the grass and make it into a desert on the 10% of the golf course at Mountain View. That costs about $550,000 to do that, to save the water in the long term. So if we do it for 100% of a course, guess what the costs go, the one-time cost, $8 million to do that. And oh, by the way, you still don't get the income, you lose that, okay? 73% of our common area is now golf courses, so if you now turn that over to CAM to maintain, that cost goes way up, and again, we lose the income. So from a financial standpoint, it doesn't work at all. It would cost every one of us not only a bunch of upfront money, but it costs us an enormous amount of extra money every year to do it. But again, the main reason we're not doing it has got nothing to do with that. It's because we are not going to make a fundamental change to the assets that we all moved here for. We're not going to take that decision. Maybe some board in 30 years from now will do it, but that's their decision. But I know why I moved here, and I moved here for all the amenities. I didn't move here for golf. I'm a golfer. I'm a little insulted that because I'm a golfer, I'm accused of not looking out for the HOA as a board member. And I think if my wife was here, she would probably shoot the person that said that, given the number of hours that I spend in my den. It's a full-time job. But we all are looking for what's the best thing for our HOA as an HOA owner. I am not a pickleball player, but I consider pickleball to be every bit as important as golf. Okay, I don't swim in our swimming pools, but I consider our swimming pools to be every bit as important as all the other amenities. As we said, we're going to choose and we're going to treat all the amenities equally. So it's just a point that I felt I had to make. So anyway, sorry for rambling on.
To add a little bit on to what Mark said, several years ago I was the chair of the Finance and Audit Committee for the town of Oro Valley. And we did some pretty extensive studies of closing the golf courses there. And what Mark is saying is exactly true. It will cost more to Saddlebrook to repurpose it through the original construction and the maintenance of that property than the losses that we're currently incurring on the golf course.
Don Crawford, Unit 45, Lot 110. I'm concerned a little bit about how you guys analyze things. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an exercise example. On the Mountain View Golf Course, prior to construction, how many people were on the staff to service the irrigation system? Anybody know?
Yeah, we have one irrigation technician.
Okay. And that's all you have servicing the irrigation. So we need to replace this high-fluting irrigation system that we're paying for now, and we've only got one guy doing maintenance now, and that's probably going to be ongoing with the new course, correct?
Yes.
So we're not saving a whole lot of money by putting in the expensive course. We still got one technician. Or what were our maintenance costs, I guess? Maybe that's a better way of putting it. What did we pay to maintain that system before we were rebuilding it?
We haven't eliminated any positions. If that's what you're driving at.
That's my point. Okay, so my point is, what did we pay for maintenance prior to the renovation of the irrigation system? What was the expense?
Well, I can't tell you that. I can tell you what we spend for all the employees that do golf. All
okay.
Right? And they have to do multiple things in a day to have the golf course prepared. What's your question?
Well, what my issue was when we're talking about, that the new system, we spend extra money for it to save money, right?
We didn't spend extra money. That is a fallacy.
Okay.
So we can get the truth on the table. The HDPE costs 15% more to buy than the PVC. The installation per foot is 50 cents per foot cheaper. The net of putting HDPE in versus PVC, we saved money by installing the PVC or the HDPE.
Okay. But when we look, I was thinking that we probably had more people on staff, and were we able to cut staff costs in the long run?
One of the things you need to understand is we've been running with a reasonably skeletal crew to maintain our courses. We're looking for maintenance efficiencies, not so we can eliminate people, it's so that we can produce a better product. We want to compete with HOA1 so our residents don't walk across the community someplace else with their golf dollars. And so by being able to do things mechanically and not have to do them manually, we can do more things to make the golf course look better and be a better product. So there was never any intent to reduce manpower, if that's what you're driving at.
That was what I was driving at, basically, because staff is a big number. Look at our operational costs, right? You not only have the wages you pay them, you got all the benefits and stuff like that. So I would think in order to save any operational costs, you're going to have to find systems that reduce staff. And if in fact we got a 50-year system now with a warranty and all this stuff that goes on for a few years, it seems like we would be able to reduce some level of staff.
No, sir, that's not going to happen.
Unfortunately, thanks.
Mona Devine, Unit 45, Lot 100. I have a couple questions that residents asked to be asked that could not be here. And I know you're going to be sending out specific information about how to vote, but within that, can you also do the bullets, the usual bullets about the percentages to do the passing yes vote, percentages of people voting? Well, during the vote, people are just asking, they asked that I ask this question, they would like to know now what percentage of people voting for the quorum on the assessment for a yes vote is needed. Just the rules of the vote.
50% plus one.
Okay, of those voting.
of those voting.
Okay, they asked me to ask that question. I knew the answer, but I wanted it to be on the record because it has come up from several people who could not be here. Also, in the interest of candor, can you provide and send out the master golf plan is fully funded by this proposal. Can you send out the estimates from the companies as how those elements are broken out? Because I assume they gave an estimate that this much it's going to cost to do bunkers, this much to do the practice green, this much to do. I think that's a question because people say what you're asking for isn't really defined for them. So I think that would be helpful for people to have.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
I would answer that. I'm the one that kind of worked and put all that information together with the information from Troon and Mike Gogol, and it's all been used in our calculations. So we could.
Mark, this is what I would ask. I would ask that you produce an information paper, that we've been discussing. Put this into an information paper. We'll make that available.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing that I would make note of is that, and it was mentioned earlier, the reserve study. That's some of my reserve advisors, is a professional company. Admittedly, though, they admitted they didn't know much about golf. And so, unfortunately, the golf part of the reserve study is, I'd say, lacking in accuracy. So, and that's the main reason why, to get good information, we went to Troon and went to Mike Gogol, our designer, who has designed many, many golf courses, to get what we consider accurate estimates. What really helped on that, of course, is doing the Mountain View course, because now we actually have real world costs of what it really takes. And so I think that the estimates we've got now, although you have to guess on inflation and construction increase costs, the estimates we've got now, I think, have a lot more sense of reality than certainly what the board was faced with long before I was on the board, when in 2019 they started up on Mountain View. And they started seeing that, the reserve advisor study said that it was going to cost $3.5 million. And then we got the bids, and one was 5.7, one was 7.4, one was 11.1 million to do it.
Right.
I don't think we're going to have, hopefully, that kind of surprise with the preserve. But certainly, these are estimates, these are guesstimates, but at least they're much better foundation of estimates than
but
we
you
have.
have two estimates and people don't, you're just saying we need to fund this $9 million. So people need some definitions when they're voting on an assessment.
And that's valid. And I'll put a white paper together. We've got the data, try to organize it so it's not too complex to read.
But so it is broken out by elements so that they can look at the chart that you provided. And also the other thing that I've asked for like 3 or 4 times, still do not know, and it's listed on some of the reserve funding, is again, it's not a defined project, but you're putting it out there that we're funding it. That's the $2 million Mountain View Clubhouse remodel. People would like to know what you're planning to do, what does the drawing look like, and I understand you don't want to talk about it till next year during the budget proposal, but it's part of this package we're voting for, and so there's a lot of rumors. What is this $2 million remodel?
Mona, I don't know where $2 million came from, but
it's on your paperwork for the spreadsheet that went out for the focus groups, so that's where I got it. And I asked about it at a previous meeting. They nodded their head.
Take a breath.
Yeah, I'm just asking.
Let me respond to you.
Just send it out.
Okay. I don't have anything to send out to you yet.
Okay.
Okay, you act like we've got a finished product in front of us. We got our first information briefing from the designer. Outside of that, I've got nothing. I don't have a piece of paper.
That's an answer for me, Matt. I've asked 3 times. If you just say you don't know, but I've asked and people didn't even respond. So I'm just saying if you've got the information, send it out.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the $2 million comes from.
I'm Jason Alsinger. I live in Unit 47. I believe it's Lot 57, might be 51. I can give you the address myself. I don't know. I consider myself, just for today, part of the 92% of the population that resides here in Saddlebrook. Although in the light of the circumstances that I'm hearing, doing a little part of picking up a putter or a driver and start activating my skills seems like a good thing to do. But I'm up here to ask, and perhaps this will go to Campbell, and what I'm about to project is something I remember hearing was no longer an option, but in light of the product that is being improved, has there been any subcommittee or committee brainstorming on making the Saddlebrook, whether or not it's just an HOA 1 or 2, a product that could be presented to tournaments beyond some of the collegiate groups that I see come on certain days, some of the lady golfers that come from the university? Is there anybody talking and walking the talk to the PGA to invite a routine money magnet to help offset the cost of dues, because we're pulling in national TV coverage for a professional tournament to use the golf courses that we need to perhaps present as some of the best courses around? Has even a thought in anybody's eye?
Yeah, you're way ahead of us on the PGA, but that was a wonderful thought. The truth is, we've been working with the Troon team on this thing. We're back to building the product first, all right? Troon knows that the preserve's worn out. Troon knows that we're just putting Mountain View back together. We got to heal it. But Dan and Mark and I guess we're the three-headed monster when it comes to all matters Troon related. We have been talking about how do we attract more play like you're describing, not the PGA, but tournaments here in Arizona. We have some handicaps. One of those is we don't have the ability to have a tournament at the preserve and some place to feed people. Right?
Yeah, people standing around on the course. That's just
all of that stuff. Yeah. So we have things that have to be dealt with. So you got to get all of the stuff on the infrastructure taken care of before you get overly ambitious. So the first asset we're going to have that's going to have any benefit like you're describing is like the American Legion tournament that came here, and we fed 150 people in the Mountain View Ballroom. That's the view. That's the vision of the future. Can't wait to get on the other side of the rebuild, the rejuvenation of the Mountain View Golf Course, and see a beautiful golf course out there and what we can do with it. But until we have that product, we don't have that to sell yet.
Thank you.
Matt, whoops. Matt, I have a gift for you. Spring has arrived. This is right outside of the door here. So it's going to get green. How about that?
I'm going to use this microphone because it works, and I intend to obey the reset timer. There we go. All right, please look past the uniform. I'm Dale Tate, Unit 35, Lot 63, and I want to say that when I buy a home, and I've bought several in my life, I realize that at some point I'm going to have to replace the roof on my house. I'm going to have to replace the AC unit, the furnace, the dishwasher, recarpet. And that's just a fact of owning a home. And I think what we're talking about here on the HOA level is really the same thing.
Got it.
So we have to put away some money to be able to pay for those capital expenses. And it's just simply the way it is. Now, in this case, we haven't put away enough money in the past, so it's going to cost us. But it's nobody's fault. I also want to say that I am not a golfer. I don't use the fitness center, clearly. I don't swim, I don't play tennis, I don't use any of those amenities. I do use the restaurants quite a bit, as you can see. But it's immaterial that I don't use those facilities for the value of my home and how it has increased in the 6.5 years that I've lived here. My home value is based in large part on the amenities we have in this HOA. And if we decide to continue kicking the can down the road and not repairing or replacing or maintaining them as they should be, then it's going to have the opposite effect on my home value. So I want to applaud the board for the uncounted thousands of hours that have been spent coming up with an intelligent, comprehensive plan to tackle this issue. So thank you very much.
My name is Melvin Todd. I'm in Unit 17, Lot 90. My wife and I are snowbirds. I'm a retired farmer, cattle feeder from Nebraska. We're here every winter. We've come here since 2000. We came because we looked at many, many retirement communities, Phoenix, here, Tucson, everywhere. We looked here and liked it because of the total package. You can't go taking out individual amenities one at a time and picking on them, the swimming pools or the tennis courts. I do play golf, but I'm 88 years old, not going to be playing very many more years, very little. But I approve of what you guys are recommending. I know I've spent on many boards of directors in my lifetime, and people do not realize the depth of which you have looked at this before you presented it to everybody. And I'd like to commend you and thank you for your efforts.
I just wanted to say, go Nebraska.
Back at you again, Linda Bowers, Lot 66, Unit 45. Two things, if I can remember what they are, is I am on the social committee for Unit 45. And we want to have an event, and we took this event, this is a food and beverage type of question. We took this event questioning down to Mountain View to see if we can have a putting group together and a meal. Well, now that the kitchen has been removed from where we now have the pro shop, in order to have meals outside on that patio that overlooks our driving range and putting area where we wanted to have our event, we now have to have the food brought from the other side of the clubhouse down in chafing dishes to this area to service this patio. I'm not so sure I like that design for the food and beverage section, because we inquired at HOA 1 how it would be done on their putting greens and to have a social event for our Unit 45 to go to HOA 1. And it was a much nicer arrangement and a bit cheaper also, because the food area we would sit at would overlook the putting area, and we'd be able to have the group together. So the catering section said, well, we'll bring the food down to you, or you have to have it in the Catalina room. Well, if we had it in the Catalina room, we wouldn't be able to see what was going on the putting green. So what has happened with this, and I'm surprised that it changed this way because we had a restaurant on that end, we've taken our restaurant away and put in it on the far end of our clubhouse. There's a little snack bar and such, but I'm told that the kitchen attached to that snack bar by the golf pro shop is no longer in use. and that the barbecues on the outside are no longer in use. So a premier golf course, you come to a resort's premier golf course to have an event, but yet they're going to bring the food from the other side of the building down, have to drive it down to the where that patio is. Okay. And I forgot what my other thing was going to be. So that is my concern, because we are now thinking about taking our units event to Saddlebrook 1 and taking our food budget to Saddlebrook 1 because of the design aspect of what is happening to service the food. Okay, now I remember the other thing. The other thing is, people come to our golf course, and when I've gone to nice golf courses, there was, at the turn, a place to get a nice sandwich, some snacks and such, where I didn't have to get out of my golf cart and go upstairs into a building to try to obtain something to eat. And also, the women's facilities, I guess the men's too, when you went to wash your hands, etc., looked of a high golf course aesthetics. Ours look like maintenance bathrooms. That is not premier. And that's my only subject I want to conclude with. Thank you.
Matt?
I hope you don't go somewhere else for your social events. Surely you can think up ideas that match to what is available within HOA2 to keep HOA2 residents being and using HOA2 facilities. I really hope you can think through that a little bit, because just to move out of here because of some event, that's not, in my opinion, very good. But
I agree with you. It's not very good, but it is a better choice for us because we'll be able to sit and watch ourselves play as a group instead of separating out our event. And our food that's going to come to us is going to come directly from a kitchen and not be put in vans and carted down to the other side of the clubhouse. Okay? All right, thank you. But we seriously, that was our first choice, and that was what we investigated. Thank you.
Matt, our next town hall is our last one? Correct? Our next town hall is our last town hall? One comment, I looked through the CCNRs about the voting, and I didn't see anything in there where you could not have two options. Well, I just think we need to, if you have, you can still have 51% with two options. So I think one of the things, and I know you're big on listening to people, one of the primary things that I've been hearing from a lot of people is they don't like the fact they only have one option. So I think we need to come up with another option for people so they can say yes for one or yes for two, and they're still guaranteed 50% plus one.
Hello, Michael Buckley, Unit 36, Lot 36 again. Just a quick comment. When all there were a big majority of golfers, not a big majority, but a big number of golfers left Saddlebrook 2 to go to Saddlebrook 1, that was partly because of the pro at that time. And he worked for Robeson Enterprises, and he made no effort to try to keep those golfers. And since we've gone through transition, I don't think that the current pro has made an effort to attract those golfers back either. And I agree with you, Matt, that we have to have the product to bring them back, But I hope that you are trying to develop a plan on how to approach all of those golfers that have left, that are HOA2 residents that buy annuals at HOA1 or golf there with punch cards or a daily fee. I mean, obviously you're not going to get all of them back, but if you don't make any effort, you won't get any of them back. And, you know, that's a lot of wasted opportunity cost right there. So, and, you know, now is probably not the time to be developing that plan, but it's definitely something to be thinking about. Thanks.
Seeing no other residents for comment, I will bring this town hall to a close. Thank you.
Horse is dead.